Well, greetings, everyone, and welcome to a special online event today called Medicinal Plants for Your Protection. Discover the preventative powers of herbs for your physical, emotional, and spiritual health. My name is Stephen Dinan. I'm the founder and CEO of the Shift Network, and I'm really thrilled to be here today with you, learning right alongside with you, because the whole area of medicinal plants is a relatively new horizon for me. And in fact, nobody has brought it alive more for me than our featured speaker, teacher, catalyst here today. His name is David Crow, and he's the founding director of Floricopia Aromatic Treasures. He's one of the world's leading authorities on integrating these different wisdom streams from Ayurveda to Chinese medicine, modern herbology, into a really comprehensive way of working with the plant kingdom that also has to do with consciousness and the evolution of our self and energy system. So it's a very comprehensive mapping of our healing potential in working in synergistic relationship with the natural world. So remarkable fountain of information, one of our favorite teachers at Shift. Welcome, David.
Thank you, Stephen. Always nice to be here.
Well, we always like to start with a little bit of backstory, and I'll say that right up front that we'll have this time with David, but we are going to have a chance to go much deeper with him in an upcoming program called Medicinal Plants for Protecting Your Body, Mind, and Spirit, a really comprehensive, powerful, life-changing course, and we'll share a bit about that towards the end of the hour. But let's begin, David, with this journey with a little bit of your backstory and journey, since I think it's always illuminating like why you've devoted yourself to be an emissary for the plant kingdom and a catalyst for this healing between us and the natural world, which, really were never separate to begin with.
Yes, and every time you ask me to tell the story, it gets more fantastical and more embellished. So I'm happy to do that. I think the most relevant part of the story in relation to our talk today is a kind of epiphany that I had when I was studying Tibetan and Ayurvedic medicine in Kathmandu. And that happened over a period of about 10 years. I lived in that area for a total of 2 years. And I was already licensed and practicing Chinese medicine before I went there, but I had a special interest in going to the source of these traditions. And so I was very fortunate to meet a teacher of Tibetan medicine who took me as his basically one and only Western student. And during that time, I also met a number of Ayurvedic teachers. So it was a very rich, wonderful period of time of my life. And when I was there, in Kathmandu, studying these medical systems, I also had a small clinic where I was treating a variety of people, including some of the Tibetan lamas and Rinpoches in the community where I lived, and a number of the travelers who came through. And illness was very normal. It's a very unhygienic environment. And so I actually suffered quite a bit myself. I had parasitic infections, I had respiratory infections, and I was in a very good situation for testing whether Ayurvedic and Tibetan medicine actually worked or not. And also good opportunity to apply the different remedies that I was learning about in my clinical practice. So at a certain point, I found myself actually quite ill. I had a raging infection in my respiratory system and my sinuses, and I also had intestinal parasites. The microbes had basically just invaded me completely. And I'd been in Kathmandu for about a year, and I had just about reached my physiological limit to be able to stay and study medicine there. And I remember one day that I kind of dragged myself out of my room, and I went to visit my teacher of Tibetan medicine, and he was totally sick also. And I went and visited some of my Ayurvedic teachers, and they were all sick. And I already knew what all of this was from. It was because the water there was so extremely contaminated and the air was so contaminated. And it was an epiphany because I realized, and this had been growing in my awareness the whole time I was there, I realized that if we have the best medicines, and that's what these teachings were offering me, I was learning the best of classical Tibetan medicine, the best of classical Ayurvedic medicine, and there was Western medicine there too. There were doctors and clinics, and all of that, and there was so much illness. And it was all directly related to the toxicity of the environment. And I began to really appreciate how the quality of life is not really dependent on the medical systems that a culture and society have. It's really dependent on more fundamental things, like the quality of the nutrition and the quality of the water and the quality of the air. Now, during that same period of time, I had also been learning a lot of things from all of my teachers about herbs and formulas and methods of preparation that were disappearing because they were connected to the biodiversity of the Himalayas, and that was being deforested and overharvested, plundered, basically. So I began to really look more deeply into what is the role of natural medicine and how can an individual stay healthy in a really toxic world. And I began to realize that we really need these medicinal plants to protect us. And I also began to realize the limitations of what they can and cannot do. So I started to see how all of these different subjects fit together. I started to see that the medicinal plants actually give us tremendous protection from environmental toxicity up to a certain level. And then after that, we have to take care of the environment. But then I began to see that medicinal plants are also a way that we can take care of the environment because they give us some of the most valuable cash crops. And that gives us the key to protecting ecosystems economically. And the economic component is really the most important piece of the puzzle because if it's not economically viable, then people are not going to take care of it. So that's where I started to see the interrelationship then between the classical plant-based medical systems, such as Chinese medicine, Ayurvedic medicine, Tibetan medicine, basically all the ethnobotanical medical systems, and their relationship to environmental preservation and their relationship to economic upliftment, and through all of that, the preservation of ethnobotanical culture. So all of those four things are closely related. So we can start by using medicinal plants, and that starts to give us immediate benefits medically, but it also has all of these downstream effects because if we start to follow the supply chain, as it's called, back to where the products come from, we see that they are coming from an individual or a family or a community who is cultivating the plants, taking care of them, doing reforestation, agroforestry projects, organic cultivation, ecological, sustainable cultivation and harvesting generally from good quality sources. And then we see that that is providing them with the economic means to be able to do that. And that, in turn, gives them the way to take care of the environment. And so it goes full circle. So by taking care of the environment, we actually reduce the toxicity that is then having such a negative impact on our health. So that was really a turning point in my studies, actually, a real revelation. And it came out of being really sick, and it came out of seeing the limitations of medicine, and it came out of realizing that we can't just take herbs symptomatically, and we also cannot just keep dosing ourselves with antibiotics, and especially in environments like that, because it will really weaken your immune system, and you'll really get sick after taking them several times. So that was 30 years ago, actually. And ever since then, that has really been the focus of my work and the primary message that I'm trying to convey by teaching herbal medicine is that there are all these other dimensions where herbal medicine has tremendous benefits, not just for, neuroprotective as we get older or hepatoprotective for our liver. That's how most people think about herbs, but really, I think about them in terms of taking care of the biosphere. And I think in terms of sustainable economics. So that's the background story that I think is most relevant for our discussion here. A little background about my time in the Himalayas.
Yeah, well, I've actually never heard that full story before, so that's fascinating. And I think you did a great job of showing how like the microcosm of us, become like the toxicity that builds up in us is also a reflection of the larger systems, and we can reverse that pattern by dealing with the kind of local toxicity, and then also buying medicinal plants that help to provide right livelihood for people who want to live in a cleaner, more biosphere healthy way. So let's talk a little bit about the sort of like the current toxicity, since, most of us live in places where we have clean water, that we don't have parasites in the water. But there's a lot of more subtle stressors and different kinds of toxicity that we're increasingly exposed to. It's a little to share a little bit about why it's so important that we think about these things in terms of like an escalating toxic load in our environment that's very kind of subliminal.
Excellent question. Well, even though we don't have the same kind of gross environmental toxicity as we encounter when we go to less developed countries, I always think of Kathmandu, my time there, because it was such a brutal exposure. But I've seen that in many other places as well. I'm sure anybody who has traveled internationally has found the diesel fumes of big cities in South America, the toxicity in the urban centers of India. All of these situations are actually what the majority of humans are living in. It's not just Kathmandu. The world is extremely toxic and polluted now. But even when we are fortunate to live in relatively clean environments, as you say, the toxicity is still there, and it comes from the food chain, and it also comes from indoor pollution. Actually, it's somewhat of a surprise, but there's actually more toxins in our homes and our workplaces than there are in a lot of urban areas now. And then we also have our general mental states and emotional states. So before I answer your question directly, I want to set the context here with a little background on how the plants work. And I know that there's a lot of emphasis on detoxification now, and that's okay as long as we understand what we're detoxifying and why and how in order for it to be effective. So the main thing that the plants are doing when we use them to protect ourselves from toxins is they're actually working inside the body exactly the same way they work in the environment. And so understanding that is a good starting point for talking about modern toxicity and toxicity in relatively clean places. So if you look out the window, and hopefully you can see some greenery out there, that greenery is actually performing the two basic metabolic functions of the biosphere. And that is that the plants are rejuvenating the elements and they are purifying the elements. So what's happening then, the trees, our gardens, bushes, flowers, all the living plants around us, they are continuously cleansing the soil through their root systems. They are continually cleansing the atmosphere through their breathing. They are continuously absorbing the sunlight, and plants are also helping to create the ozone layer of the planet. So plants are the agents that regulate the elements of the biosphere. And the two main things that they do is that they rejuvenate and they detoxify. So if we look at the human body, that's exactly what the human body does anatomically and physiologically also. 50% of our metabolic functions are to rejuvenate, take nutrition and energy in, and the other 50% are to eliminate and detoxify. So when we have a healthy diet, those functions are supported. And when we use herbal medicine, those functions are supported also. And how are they supported? Because the intelligence of the plants does the same thing inside the ecosystem of the body as it does in the ecosystem of the external biosphere. So that's the basic context then that we look at. And we also take into consideration that the process of rejuvenation and detoxification that's happening inside the body happens all the time, every instant. And we can be in any environment. It can be a unhealthy environment, and we can have a strong detoxification capacity. And we can also be in a very clean environment, and we can still become toxic. And the reason for that is because that balance inside of us is an ongoing process that's influenced by a lot of different things. So when we start talking about using herbs for protecting ourselves from toxins or detoxifying ourselves, it's not a simple process of just take this new product that's going to flush out your colon and you're going to be detoxified. That's not how it works. It works on all levels all the time. So therefore, we have a huge pharmacy of herbs that we can choose according to the kinds of stressors that we have, as you mentioned, and the kind of toxins that we're faced with. And in our modern culture, the stressors are actually one of the primary causes of the physiological toxins. We can have a healthy diet, and if we don't get good sleep, we can wake up and we still have metabolic toxicity. Okay. So that's the bigger context where we start to look at how do we actually take care of the stressors and the toxins that are in our modern culture. We have to look at not just how we eat, we also have to look at how well do we rest? How deeply do we rest? And if we don't rest well, then there's all these herbs that we can bring in that we wouldn't even think of being detoxifying. But if they help us get good sleep, they are detoxifying, and we should use them for that particular purpose. And then we have the digestive disorders, and then all the things that come with the modern diet, and then all the different food intolerances and gluten and all these kind of things. All of those things create internal toxicity. So how do we treat that? How do we protect ourselves from that? Well, we improve our digestive function. So we can go through the body and we can look at all these different systems. And what we can see is that protection from toxicity and detoxification and rejuvenation all follow the two basic principles of nourish the body on all levels, in all ways, and gently support the body's natural detoxification mechanisms all the time in an ongoing way with all possible methods. So that's where herbal medicine comes in, because when we understand those two basic principles, we can apply a wide palette of different herbs and essential oils and diets and therapies to protect ourselves very effectively, actually, to build our immune system, to use for preventive medicine, and to help the body to continuously detoxify at a gentle, ongoing level, which is really the best way to do it. It's not wise to try to do an aggressive, cathartic, intense cleansing program, especially as we get older, and especially if it's targeting the colon, because what will happen is that the digestive system will become weaker. And having a strong digestive system is one of the primary ways to protect ourselves from external and internal toxins. So what I advocate then is really ongoing, gentle support of what the body is always doing. So if we take a walk, the body is detoxifying. Every time we exhale, it's detoxifying. If we have healthy bowel movements, it's detoxifying. If our urination is healthy and balanced, we are detoxifying. Every time we get good sleep, every time we drink good liquids, every time we eat good food, every time we meditate and relax, every time the nervous system calms down, we are detoxifying. So that gives us a huge number of ways that we can use natural medicine to support natural detoxification and protect ourselves from the effects of toxicity.
Wow, you offer such a deep, holistic view of this, and I really appreciate this sort of emphasis on it's not like a single, like just pop this pill and you feel better, or try to like rush through it. It's just like there's a building of respecting the natural rhythms and the natural story, and just helping to amplify that and augment that. So I think that that's such a wise perspective, and particularly for, as you said, for people who are a bit older and their systems need more of the support rather than kind of like a overwhelm. So let's talk about some specifics then, and maybe you can go into specific areas like respiratory system and give us a sense for what's a more integrated way of approaching this with herbal therapies.
Yes, the respiratory system is a good place to start. So I'll just give some ideas, and a lot of these things people, I'm sure, are familiar with, and I'll give some new ideas. So respiratory immunity, when I think about boosting our respiratory immunity and protecting ourselves from respiratory toxins, what I think about is the fire season in California. And this, of course, is not just in California, it's all over the West. And every summer gets longer and longer and hotter and drier, and the fires are getting worse and worse. And I always get a lot of questions when this is happening. How do I protect myself? So this is a very relevant topic. And it's a good example, actually, of what we have most likely in our future, a lot more of this. Ecological disturbance is going to create a lot more toxicity that we're going to be faced with. So what I recommend is an integrated approach where we're using a lot of things. And a lot of people think about certain kinds of herbs. And a lot of people also ask about aromatherapy and essential oils. And I always recommend that we combine these things. So the suggestions that I will give for respiratory immunity are really very holistic, and the things that are easily accessible for everybody to use as a home pharmacy. And it's not necessary, or it's not even wise to just wait and use things symptomatically in an emergency. So when there is heavy smoke, which is what happens all over the West now for months on end, we have to think about actual protection from that mechanically, which means air filters and things like that. But then what can we do to build up our internal resistance to that? Because, of course, everybody's affected by it. People who have weakness of the respiratory system are going to be much more prone to severe reactions. It's going to affect kids very seriously who have a propensity to asthma, and elderly people, bronchitis. All these kind of conditions flare up and become quite acute and epidemic levels when we're having these kind of climate change-based medical, ecological problems. So a simple home pharmacy, if I were just to sum this up, it would consist of several classes of herbs. And the way that we can think about this, again, go back to that concept that the herbs are purifying the atmosphere. The herbs are purifying the air element. The herbs are purifying the soil and the water and so forth. And we think about, how do we duplicate that in our home? How do we duplicate that in the body? So to duplicate that in the home, we start to think about using essential oils. And the essential oils that can be very helpful, just as a background fragrance, are going to be the conifers. That's going to be spruce, pine, fir, and then the eucalyptus oils also. Now, I will mention that if you are actually in a zone where there's a tremendous amount of smoke coming from forest fires, which is almost always what it is, there's already a lot of essential oil toxins that are in the environment. You don't need to be putting more pine essential oil in your home. So I wouldn't recommend doing that. But when the atmosphere is relatively clear, if you use the conifer oils and the eucalyptus oils as a background fragrance in the home, what it will do is it will actually strengthen your respiratory immunity. And it has an effect on the terrain of the respiratory mucous membrane that is balancing. It supports the healthy respiratory mucous membrane function. And it does that in a variety of ways. It's expectorant. Just having a diffuser with some mild oils like that, respiratory oils, has a long-term beneficial immune enhancing effect. And it has a long-term beneficial decongestant and expectorant kind of effect. And it purifies the atmosphere of pathogenic microbes. So one of the common testimonials that I have heard over and over again from people who just brought in the simple use of those kind of oils in a diffuser, that's all, nothing fancy. They observe over and over that they used to get a lot of colds and flus. So that's how we can prepare ourselves for the more intense macro changes that are happening in the environment. We have to start with boosting our own health in general. So that's a good, simple system. And then the next group of essential oils that I would recommend will be flower oils, things like lavender and geranium. These are very nice to add, actually, along with those conifer oils. And they also have nice immune boosting effects, atmospheric purifying effects, antimicrobial effects, and they also have very relaxing effects on the nervous system. And anything that helps to relax the nervous system is going to also be beneficial for our immune system in general. The next major category of herbs to think about for your home pharmacy are going to be the aromatics. And those are going to be things like peppermint and tulsi and rosemary. And again, lavender as tea or chamomile as tea. Any of these aromatic herbs that contain essential oils can also be excellent for the respiratory system. They also are very good for protecting the digestive system. They give us good digestion. So ginger root is an excellent remedy. And so for winter season, actually, ginger tea with tulsi tea is very good just to drink on an ongoing basis for boosting the respiratory system. And then having those essential oils in the background will also support that. Now, with the essential oils, we can go a step further and we can start to do steam inhalation with them, a couple drops on a pot of hot water, cover the head with a towel and breathe it. And we can also start to put a couple drops in the bath, not more than 3 or 4 drops, just to be on the safe side, disperse it around nicely. And we can also use those in steam cabinets. We can use them in a massage oil. We can mix them with a salve and put it on the chest. So what are we doing? We're actually applying the immune system of the aromatic plants, because that's why plants produce essential oils. The conifer forests, the eucalyptus trees, the tulsi herb, all of these plants are producing these essential oils to protect themselves. And so what we're doing is we're taking those essential oils and those aromatic plants, we're drinking them as tea. We drink the peppermint tea. We have the tulsi essential oil in the diffuser. What are we doing? We're actually using the immune power, the distilled or infused molecules from those plants to boost our own immune power. It's a fascinating thing to consider that the human immune system is almost parallel in many, many ways. It is parallel in many ways with the plant immune systems. So what we're doing then is using their immune intelligence to boost ours. So the aromatic teas, I gave you a few examples. Some essential oils, I gave you a few examples, and those combine beautifully. And the next major group of herbs that we think about for the respiratory home pharmacy is going to be the medicinal mushrooms. And these are excellent, especially if we have the combination of either low immunity, tendency to get colds and flus easily, or we have more of an allergic constitution, or both. And that's because the medicinal mushrooms have this function that's called immunomodulating. That means they're not an immune stimulant like echinacea. Echinacea is an immune stimulant that is excellent for using when you need a high dose for a short period of time of something that's actually going to kick out a viral infection out of your respiratory system. Echinacea is excellent to have in your home pharmacy, but you don't want to take it on an ongoing basis. But the medicinal mushrooms, on the other hand, can be very helpful for taking in smaller doses over an extended period of time to actually balance and harmonize and strengthen our overall immunity. So that's another very important group to consider. And that includes the reishi mushrooms. That includes also the chaga mushroom and cordyceps. And these medicinal mushrooms also overlap very nicely into other protective areas: neuroprotective, anti-aging, hepatoprotective for the liver. And finally, one of the most important herbs to have in the home pharmacy is astragalus. Very safe, very easy to use, virtually no warnings or contraindications about it. And you can cook it in soups. You can take it as tincture. There's a variety of ways it can be prepared. And that's a really good boosting herb for anybody with lowered immunity. It's the major herb for people who are going through chemo and radiation, for example, when the immune system is compromised, but it's also deeply, deeply nourishing. It builds the core immunity, as it were. It builds the white blood cells and the red blood cells back up again. So that's the main approach for the respiratory system. The essential oils, aromatherapy, used in a variety of ways: diffuser, bath, chest rubs, inhalation. Basically get those aromatic molecules of the forest in the home. And then use aromatic teas. That's also going to be very beneficial for digestion. Then use the medicinal mushrooms, and then have astragalus there. So I could go on about this actually for hours, just this one aspect of immunity and protection. But that's the quick, very short version of things that everybody can do starting right away.
Wow. Well, David, I thought that was particularly fascinating. For some reason, it hadn't registered to the same degree before that we, by taking in these aromatics, that we're actually taking in the immune system of the forest. I mean, that's a fascinating insight, and really speaks to this, the ways we're embedded. We are nature, and we aren't just, in nature. And so really fascinating. Well, I know there's so much you could go into each area, but I want to make sure we cover the main areas we said we talk about. So let's touch upon liver and environmental and metabolic toxins and how to address that.
Yes, and unfortunately, as we go through these bullet points, the subjects get bigger and bigger and the time gets less and less. So what can I tell you in 5 minutes about protecting our liver? Well, obviously, that's one of the main organs that we need to keep healthy. And I think a lot of people at this point know or are familiar with some of the basic herbs. Certainly people have heard of turmeric, and turmeric is definitely hepatoprotective. And people have probably also heard about milk thistle, and maybe not. Milk thistle is a very specialized herb. It actually protects the hepatocytes, the liver cells, by preventing the uptake of toxins. And so milk thistle seed is used for people who have had already a lot of exposure to toxicity, who are going through recovery. And so this is a very good herb to think about for people who have a history of drinking a lot of alcohol, drug abuse, or possibly some kind of exposure to some industrial toxins, where we actually see a real burden on the liver of toxicity. Milk thistle is going to be one of the first ones that we think about. So that can be taken in a variety of forms. I like to suggest that people use it more in a traditional form, which is to get the whole seed and to roast it and grind it and then use that like a kind of flavoring on the food. But the active ingredient that people should look for is the silymarin. That's the standardized compound that is generally found in these kind of products. And that's the best way to actually protect the liver, is to just take that. If you eat the milk thistle seeds in the diet, it's like low grade, ongoing protection, but it's also detoxifying. It's not just protection, it actually helps the liver to detoxify. Now, the other very important class of herbs to think about for protecting the liver are going to be the bitter herbs that stimulate the cholagogic function. That means the herbs that stimulate the bile flow. And there's a number of herbs that do this. And the easiest way that people can find this is in what we would call the digestive bitters compounds. And these are easily available through the health food store, generally in a tincture form. So you just take a half a dropper, typically, 10 to 15 drops in a little bit of water, about 10 minutes before a meal. You could do that once or twice a day. Now, what that's going to do is it's going to stimulate the increased formation of bile in the liver, and then it's going to stimulate the secretion of the bile through the gallbladder, and then that's going to travel through the intestines. That's the main way that we detoxify the liver. It's not through taking things that are targeting the colon. It's not through laxatives. And when we use this particular approach of activating the bile flow through the liver, it's also going to have a very positive effect on treating chronic constipation because bile is a laxative. So this is the easiest way to think about detoxification of the liver is this class of the bitter herbs. And then the aromatics also, again, are frequently combined. As a matter of fact, if you look at the typical digestive bitter type of compound, you're going to see that it's partly bitter herbs like gentian. That's a major bitter herb that's frequently found. And that's often combined with aromatics such as ginger. So that combination of bitter and aromatic is the best way, just at low doses on an ongoing basis. That's the best way to protect and to detoxify the liver. Not to do a dramatic cathartic gallbladder flush, drinking a lot of olive oil. That's actually dangerous. Just do it very slowly with a few drops of these bitter herbs on a daily basis. And that's the principle here that I always advocate. Go slowly, do it over a longer period of time. That's going to have a much deeper effect. So that covers the liver very, very briefly. So, Stephen, I can just keep going on here right into point number 3.
Let's go right to the next one around the radiation and heavy metal toxicity.
Right. Well, again, we have something that's, about 5 days worth of material here. Let's see if I can squeeze this into 5 minutes. So what a lot of people don't know about is that there's a lot of research now that's coming out about the antioxidant powers of herbs for protecting against radiation. And the protection against radiation is basically of 3 main categories that people have widespread concern about. First is the obvious thing we would think of, which is the radiation that is in the environment that has come from places like Fukushima. And some of those compounds are very long-lived, and they have traveled a very long ways, and they have gotten into the food chain and so forth. The second is people who are going through radiotherapy, treatment with radiation for cancer. And Western medicine, allopathic medicine, acknowledges that it needs something to protect people from the adverse reactions to that, because people get terrible side effects from it. So that's the second reason that we think about using these herbs. And then the third reason that a lot of people are concerned about is electromagnetic radiation. Now, that's really something different. And so the herbs are specifically beneficial and are getting a lot of research now for protecting from the first 2 types of radiation. Now, I believe that if our immune system is really strong and well nourished, that the nervous system especially is balanced and strong, that will protect us from EMFs more than anything. But when it comes to medical radiation or protecting ourselves from radiation in the environment, there's a long list of herbs that are extremely effective, apparently, because they have been used actually in communities that have been exposed to nuclear toxicity. There's been radioactive accidents that have happened. There's been quite a bit of research, unfortunately, in cases where there's been radiation poisoning, not just in individuals, but in larger groups of people. And they've actually found that there's a lot of benefits in these things. So let me just go through some of the herbs that have been found to be extremely effective. It's interesting because the aromatic herbs, again, have been found to be extremely beneficial because of their antioxidant compounds. And some of the things that have been found, for example, is that the peppermint actually protects the reproductive system from radiation. And rosemary is a very good herb that also protects against general radiation toxicity. Ginger and tulsi, again, I'll just mention these. And these are herbs that actually have studies confirming these things. So then we have other things. We have seaweeds and chlorella and spirulina. And we also have miso that has been used in Japan for helping people with radiation toxicity. And then we also find turmeric, again, is very important. And we also find that aloe vera juice is being studied and found effective for protecting against radiation. And then we also have the Ayurvedic herbs that people have probably heard about, triphala. And that's 3 different fruits. It's known as a mild laxative and nutritive tonic, but it is also radioprotective. So I think that the main point that I can convey here is really that a lot of the herbs that we use commonly have tremendous potential in this area as well. Another big category is the adaptogens. People are hearing a lot about adaptogens, rhodiola, and ginseng. These types of herbs are also radioprotective. So that's the very quick overview. And I'll also just give a very quick overview here of a few things for preventing adrenal exhaustion and emotional burnout. And that's going back to what I was saying, that we can't really protect ourselves if we're under stress and we don't sleep well and we have chronic fatigue and so forth. So what do we do here? Well, the best suggestion that I can make is really to help balance the biorhythm. And how do we do that with herbs? There's a number of things that are very helpful. The first thing we want to think about is concentrated nutrients at the herbal level. And one of the best for that is going to be milky oat seed. You may have heard of it, maybe not, but milky oat seed, which is gluten-free, by the way. Milky oat seed in naturopathic and herbal medicine is the number 1 food for an exhausted adrenal system and overstimulated nervous system. So this is very easy to take, very easy to use, very easy to get it. It's very cost effective. And that will combine very, very nicely with lots of other adaptogenic type of herbs. So for example, the milky oat seed and rhodiola. And that type of formula, very simple, take it in small doses for a longer period of time, and it's going to have a nourishing effect that is not stimulating. Now, here's the key, is that when people develop adrenal exhaustion and emotional burnout, they tend to go for the stimulants because they want more energy. But the very simple solution that I will give you here is if you have an exhausted nervous system, you don't need more energy. You need more sleep. And therefore, we go to all of the herbs that help us sleep well. We think of the chamomile, extremely simple. We think of a few drops of lavender essential oil on the pillow or in the bath, extremely simple. But then we also think about some of the stronger sedatives, passion flower, tincture before bed, very calming to the nervous system. We might even think of something a little stronger, hops. Valerian, we think about something milder, lemon balm. Okay, lemon balm tea, really nice for just relaxing the nervous system. So flower oils in the diffuser, lavender and geranium and ylang ylang and neroli, orange blossom. So these are just a few things quickly off the top of my head, since I know that once I get going, time goes so quickly. But I hope that was helpful.
Super helpful, and we could listen to you for hours, and we have to respect the time limits that we have. So, speaking of which, I think that it's clear that a lot of people could get so much value from being able to go deeper with you, and there is the opportunity to do so. So, let's spend a little time talking about that as a next step, since our deepest commitment is not that you just hear some inspiration, but you really make substantial positive changes in your life, that you have a shift of the baseline of your health, of your well-being, that you are strengthening your systems and you're reducing toxicity, and you're really creating a protective sheath around the core of you so that you can really shine and do what you're here to do. So David has graciously agreed to teach this program. It's a very comprehensive program and really is going to give you a whole new foundation for your health and well-being and ultimately body, mind, and spirit. So the course is called Medicinal Plants for Protecting Your Body, Mind, and Spirit, creating your herbal home pharmacy for optimal health, positive emotions, and spiritual well-being. So you can find this program laid out in all the detail at Plants for Protecting, FOR protecting.com, plantsforprotecting.com. And this is going to be a 7-week program and really lay step-by-step the foundations that you need to understand for your herbal home pharmacy to really address these different systems and do so in a way that's nourishing and at a pace that your body can sustain and thrive with, rather than the overwhelming kind of toxic clearing that some people advocate. So again, this is practical information. It applies to both your health, but also your emotional well-being and ultimately your spiritual well-being, since David really approaches this from a very multidimensional, consciousness-based approach, in addition to having the technical understanding of what herbs do what and how to use them in the safest possible way. So, David, I'd love for you to share in your own words what people are going to get when they do this program with you. And I should say there's no prerequisites for this. This is really open to whoever has a real interest in it.
Yes, of course. Thank you. So we have 7 modules, and basically these are the most important organ systems that we should know how to protect. So the first is the respiratory system, and we're just going to talk about a variety of herbs and essential oils and aromatherapy for a lot of different aspects of the respiratory system. We'll talk about the safe uses of the herbs and the essential oils. That's always a primary concern when I'm teaching herbology, is it's reaching a lot of people in all kinds of different health conditions. And I always provide a lot of information, many documents, to make sure that everybody understands the correct dosage and the correct methods of application and any potential herb-drug interactions. This is always a very big concern in the back of my mind when I'm teaching a large audience. So respiratory immunity, and we can talk about herbs and essential oils to help stop smoking, for example. And then we'll delve into medicinal mushrooms for boosting immunity, and also how to use essential oils specifically for purifying the atmosphere and or immunity to pathogens and atmospheric toxins, as I touched on briefly. So this also includes a continuation of this introduction, best things to have in your home pharmacy for the whole family. So a lot of these things are they're very general. They're basically for everybody. This is not in-depth treatment of specific respiratory conditions. However, a lot of the information in these modules, if you do have a specific condition, if you have, for example, problems in your respiratory system, a lot of the herbs and the essential oils will be very beneficial, even though it's not a course about treatment. It's a course about prevention. In Module 2, we're going to talk about protecting the digestive system, and that includes protecting our digestive system from ourselves, which means bad diet and against the stress in the nervous system. But it also covers inflammation and pathogens. And there's also quite a bit of information about using the relaxing herbs to relax the stress that affects the digestive system, and then also special ways of using essential oils on the abdomen. Since we can't take them internally, that's always a very confusing thing for a lot of people. They think that we can drink essential oils, but we cannot. It's actually very dangerous. And then also quite a bit of discussion about how we can use herbs to recover from antibiotic use. And that's a very widespread issue. People take antibiotics, their digestion is never the same for quite a long time. So herbs can help us actually to rebuild our intestinal immunity, digestive immunity, and support the recolonization of the healthy bacterial system. Module 3, protection for the liver. And again, I touched on a very limited number of things, but we're going to go into quite a lot of detail. The liver detoxification processes, how to support them, the importance of nutrition, some of the misconcepts and more dangerous approaches to detoxifying the liver that we can avoid, the role of nutrition and dietary support, and again, more about the medicinal mushrooms because they're very important for the digestive system and the liver as well. Number 4, protection for our brain and nervous system. There's a lot of herbs that are very neuroprotective, very beneficial, and that protects us against stress, and it also protects us against radiation, and it also protects us against aging. It slows down the aging process. So many herbs are very beneficial, and these have not only a long history of use in the classical Asian medical systems like Chinese medicine and Ayurveda, placed tremendous emphasis on the herbs that protect the brain and the nervous system and slow down aging. Longevity herbs are a huge subject in those classical systems. But now we have scientific confirmation of that also. So we'll be talking about neuroprotective herbs and also some specialized uses of essential oils. For example, we can make a blend of a few drops of essential oils and a carrier oil that can have a beautiful stimulating effect on our cerebral circulation that can enhance our concentration and memory if we massage it on our scalp. So there's some very nice ways of using aromatherapy to stimulate our brain. Module 5, protection for the heart, is just exactly what it sounds like. Herbs that are very good for the circulatory system, cardiovascular system. And we'll look a little bit more about essential oils and aromatherapy for the circulatory system. And we'll touch on how we can protect ourselves emotionally by strengthening our cardiovascular system. Because in Chinese medicine, there's a very close link between our mental states, our spirit, and the heart. So number 6, very important module, protection for the muscles and the bones and the joints, the musculoskeletal system. There's a lot of things we can do, not just with herbs internally, but here's where we can start taking herbal baths. And here's where we can make a lot of ointments and salves and things like that using the essential oils and different carriers to apply to the joints externally. Here's where we're going to learn some very interesting herbs that generally are not that well known. A lot of people know about turmeric for arthritis. There's a lot of herbs that people don't know about yet that are more specialized. So we'll get into those. And then number 7, we'll talk about the herbs for radiation and just explore that further. So I gave a very brief introduction to that, but we'll go through all those major categories of medicinal mushrooms and the adaptogens and the aromatics and the herbs that are really rich in antioxidants and how they work. Why they are now being found to be highly effective for radio protection. So, Stephen, that's the quick version of what the 7 modules are about.
Well, it sounds amazing, and I love the comprehensiveness and how many benefits can flow from really getting all of this in alignment in your life. So it's really quite a gift that you've created this. I should note that this is a home pharmacy course, a clinical herb course, but it doesn't have any prerequisites. So it's different than the medicinal plants and spiritual evolution programs in the past, since those are more about the spiritual well-being. This is really has a lot of focus on detox and rejuvenation. It's also different than some of the advanced programs we've done where we go much deeper into specific conditions. This gives you the kind of the foundational framework that helps you then work with whatever specific herbal treatments you want. So this program, again, you can see all the details at plantsforprotecting.com, plantsforprotecting.com. It's going to run on Wednesdays at 5 Pacific time. And I'd like to say that even if you are not available at Wednesdays at 5 Pacific, you can get the full value by participating with the downloads and the course transcripts and the Q&A. And there's ways that you can also ask questions in group. So there's a lot of value in going through a program together. There's a shared learning environment, a global community that forms around these programs. So I'll share a bit more on the high level. These are a bit longer than your typical programs. David has a lot to share, so we actually do 105 minutes, just under 2 hours, which includes live Q&A time for each one. There's exercises and practices you can do at home. You've got a Facebook community. You get recordings, both video, audio, and transcripts for every single class session. And there's also a bunch of great bonuses. So David is very abundant with bonuses. And so we are giving you, as part of the just enhancing the value of this program, a whole set of audio dialogues from the Plant Medicine Summit archives, which David has been the host of. This is called the Plant Medicine Summit Sampler. You can see more details on the page at plantsforprotecting.com. It's also a set of audio teachings from the Medicinal Plants and Spiritual Evolution Retreat. It's called Secrets of the Medicine Buddha. Great little set of teachings there. There's also a recording from David called The Feast of Nectars, Elixirs for Rejuvenation. Great complement to the core of this program. And something that is particularly valuable and often worth the price of admission itself is 20% discount from the Floracopia online store. So instead of just hearing about all these wonderful products, you can actually get them from one of the best sources in the world, and you can do so at a 20% discount. So you can really build these into your home pharmacy and really get the full value from the herbs that are going to be talked about. And I should also mention there's one extra bonus which is available till midnight tonight. And we'd like to do this as a way to encourage you to go to the page at plantsforprotecting.com and make a decision now. It's easy to get distracted by other things. If you can feel the value that this is going to bring in your life, the benefits downstream for your health, for your well-being, for just not being taken out by all the different toxicity in the world, it's like then you've got an extra incentive to do so today and just make your decision. So this is going to be the top 5 Plant Medicine Summit recordings from Plant Medicine Summit 2019. David, that's the extra bonus for today. Anything that you want to share about those top 5 recordings that you did this year?
It was a great summit. There were so many good speakers. I just encourage people to check it out. These speakers that were on the summit really have a wealth of information to share about a variety of subjects. So I think that it's better just for people to just listen to it than for me to try to explain it. It would take too long and it wouldn't do it justice.
Okay. Well, it's amazing how much value is packed into this. I mean, with the extra long courses, all the bonuses, it's really, really packed with the information that can transform your basic health and well-being, body, mind, and spirit. And it's only 3 payments of $109, or you can save about 10% when you pay in full with one payment of $297. So do go to the page at plantsforprotecting.com. That's plantsforprotecting.com. The course starts on April 24th, and as I said, at Wednesdays at 5 Pacific time. And you're going to be in for a really illuminating ride that has great downstream benefits. So I encourage you to go there and make your decision today. And if you do so, you get the extra top 5 recordings from this year's summit. So David, you're always such a fountain of information. I learn something new from you every time, like the whole thing around the immune system of conifers, and that we're taking the essence of the immune system into ours. It's fascinating. So I feel like you offer not just some recipes for healing, but really a paradigm shift in how we relate to the whole natural world and our own physiology. So it's really been a blessing to be with you for this last hour, and thank you so much for offering the upcoming program. Anything that's still on your heart you want to share with folks who are considering joining you for the next 7 weeks?
Well, Stephen, it's always an honor. And I'm always grateful to be able to share this information, because personally, I think this is some of the most important information that we could possibly be learning. I think that what this period of time is about globally is learning about our dependency on nature. And I think that we are rapidly heading to a collective epiphany that we need water, and we need healthy soil, and we need healthy plants. And as part of that, I think we're going to realize that we absolutely have to have good, healthy food, which means healthy agriculture. And it means that people are going to be recognizing, and are recognizing globally very rapidly, the importance of medicinal plants for doing those two basic functions that I introduced at the beginning. The medicinal plants give us very highly concentrated nutrients that we frequently don't get from the food chain, and the medicinal plants help us to naturally detoxify. And those two things are really at the root of all illnesses and health challenges, and we need those functions more and more. So thank you, Stephen, for the opportunity to share this information. I think it's really critical, increasingly necessary for people to learn about this.
Very critical. And I think, and your point being that as various environmental challenges increase, this is going to be ever more useful for us as we have to deal with more and more stressors. So thank you for this offering. Thank you for your wisdom. And for all you who are considering joining, I encourage you to go for it. It's really the money-back guarantee of your satisfaction. So there's really no risk. And you can do so. plantsforprotecting.com. And when you sign up today by midnight, you get the extra top 5 recordings from the Plant Medicine Summit. So thanks all. Let's go forth, be healthy, be radiant, and be fulfilled. So thank you.